Yeah, I mean, I think that makes a ton of sense. And I think, if we look at this, I think every director of sales and marketing, every revenue director, every GM kind of looks to the side and says, okay, oh wow, there are a lot of, 9 to 1 returns out there. That is definitely something that, piques my interest. I can drive direct business, so I can cut down on my commission shares. I can hopefully, acquire some new customer information. So this, Meta is definitely an option that I need to explore. So for those hoteliers out there, how would you tell them to set up budgeting? Because we know that's the next question out of their mouth is, this is amazing. This seems like, great returns, but how do I budget for it? Walk us through that, if you would.
Absolutely, budget. So those are the magic questions when we start talking about Metasearch. In part,
it is almost October.
Yeah, I know. We have to start thinking to 2021 already. But it becomes a question oftentimes of which budget does it come out of? Is this a marketing department budget, or is this a distribution department budget, or maybe none of the above? So those are the first things we have to start thinking about. We used to call it the budget volleyball game, where everybody keeps on serving it to somebody else. But there's a number of different philosophies to look at with this. So one of the first ones is based on the idea that if you shut off your Metasearch, that doesn't actually stop Metasearch from happening. It just means it's happening for somebody besides you. So now what you've done is, rather than taking the booking directly to your hotel, to your brand.com, now you've allowed Expedia or somebody else to come in there and own that point of sale instead of you. So if your cost of sale was at 12%, taking it direct, and your cost of sale through an OTA is 15%, then philosophically, why would you ever shut that off just so that you could take it at a more expensive cost of sale, right? That doesn't make sense. So philosophically, my answer is you should never shut it off. It should be uncapped. In a perfect world scenario, that would be what we want to do. Advantage to that, you're always present. You always have the historical data that you can look at, because that can be very telling and give you a lot of other information. And you can usually get that at a lower cost of sale. Disadvantage to that is just basically the reality check. And reality check is that most companies have to have a marketing budget, right? There has to be a fixed budget that goes along with that. So we'll come back to the fixed budget here in just a moment. First, though, I want to present another option, and that is for the person that has no budget at all. I don't have a marketing budget. I just can't do that at all, particularly because of COVID and what that has done to not just our industry, but even Google's industry, TripAdvisor's, Trivago's, and so on. There are options out there to use what they would refer to as commission programs. Now, in Google in particular, you have to be very careful about how you refer to this, because they have multiple variations of their commission program. There is a cost per acquisition, which is basically a pay per booking model. There's also a pay per stay model, which is a consumed reservation. That's what I consider to be the true commission model. But there's options in between there that go with that. So advantage, I don't need a marketing budget. I pay after the guest checks out. Okay, fantastic. It's just like paying a travel agent. We can work with that. Disadvantage, I have no control over this. What a commission model ends up doing is Google is going to take that data, they're going to take those conversions and the revenue that they are getting off of that and reverse engineer that, work it all the way back through the math to figure out what does this equate to as a cost per click, or what they call an effective cost per click. And that's going to determine your ranking order in those points of sale. So you don't get to control that, but it can be a good way to at least get started and get in the door. Last but not least, though, is then the CPC model. So on a CPC model, you do have that control, but of course you do need to have a marketing budget up front to work with that. So what I generally recommend, and it's hard to just say, well, allocate $500 a month. Well, allocate $500 a month doesn't make sense if your normal media spend is $100 a month, or if it was $5,000 a month. So that's a completely irrelevant number. So that's why I say make it a percentage of your media spend, because you're generally going to see the traffic flow that you're getting from Metasearch very similar. It should run parallel in many ways to what you're seeing off of other channels. So if you're doing it as a percentage of your media spend, then you just have to figure out how aggressive do I want to be. And that's going to help define what that percentage ought to be. The more aggressive, of course, the higher the percentage.